Nobody.
You want to see secrets?
Yeah.
Okay, come 31 seconds.
Yep. Comments. 3.
Comments on.
Comments on. Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Stevens, and Vicky Helm is taking a break, but I can promise you she's here watching. So she's got this great big project she's working on right now, and she needed a little bit of a break, but I can guarantee you she's never going to be too far away from this group, Success Secrets for Business, Family, and Life. For some reason, that name has always turned into a tongue twister for me on this Thursday morning. I want it to be Friday morning, but it's Thursday morning for your coffee break show. Coffee's, oh yeah, right there, but with the tongue going, it's got to be water for the morning. Um, Want to talk about a couple of things as you guys come on into the group. One, two, three, four of you, and as we head off to a Thursday, approaching Paycheck Friday. There are a couple of powerful words out there that we deal with. We kind of create our future around two words, and that's what if, or but what if. There's a couple of ways we can look at that. What if? Good morning, Don. I see you over there. Hello. uh, we can either, as Vicky would say, empower with a what if, or we can destroy with a but what? But what if? So there's two things to kind of look at through your day. How many encounters with situations do you empower yourself with a what if? What if we did this? What if we created that? What if? It's something we and I have used to prevent from doing things that probably should have been done, that I should have been that I should have been afraid of doing. All right. Hey, it always helps if you have the mic up a little bit more than just above a whisper. All right. Let's look at some of the stories today. I had a came across this kind of fascinating thing on Twitter. Should we be, you know, what do we think about this COVID lockdown? Where are you guys on that? Is it time for us to kind of come out of our holes and be brave and go into the world with appropriate gear? Or should we stay, kind of hold up until this whole thing blows over? And then that begs the question of how long will that take? Good morning, Risa. And the mysterious Facebook user, as we have to say, we have to give StreamYard permission to see your name so we can address you by your name. So is it time to stay in? And as we here at Metadime watch this pandemic unfold, there were, how do you say it kindly, horrific pictures and videos coming out of China, out of Wuhan in particular. And so you're like, okay, we have to lock down. And then the methods the Chinese used to control the thread were authoritarian, being kindly. It was on the intense side. And so you would have to agree that you got to stay out of the way of this virus. But there's probably variables that were in play in Wuhan versus what's happening here in the States. It seems that those metro areas, those locations where the population density is the greatest, there is the greatest risk for those clusters to blow up. I agree, Risa. We're being cautious, absolutely being cautious, uh, and so I'm just kind of wondering where to go. And so, how does political correctness throw into this? And I'm going to pop over here to this curious little story. And I'm going to throw this up full screen because it was kind of interesting. Caribou Coffee. Have you heard of them? They have these little sleeves that go around these hot coffee mugs. So every fourth one of these has the saying, fight the urge to remain indoors. And they're literally tossing these little sleeves. Is that going too far? Do we not have enough common sense to see beyond this kind of thing? I mean, is that too much? I mean, it's kind of cute, fight the urge to stay indoors. That could be kind of a cool memento from this spring, summer, winter of 2020, where we all got a pause. We all took a break. The virus said, time out, guys. Simply time out, time to stay at home a little bit and reevaluate your life. But is tossing every fourth one of these little sleeves, going a little too far? Ah, Ryan McShane, I see you. Good morning, Ryan. It just wouldn't be a coffee break show without your presence. So we're all being a little bit cautious with re-emerging into society. There's another story that I found a little bit interesting, and this one we'll skip that one. We'll come back to this. Is that there are two studies that are showing that are offering some of the first scientific evidence that surviving COVID-19 might actually result in immunity, and this is in the case of monkeys. So we have to see if that particular primate study has a correlation and has the ability to translate back over to humanity, because we're not identicals. Our genomes are not interchangeable, if you will. But it is a little bit of a hope that if you get this virus, and as we talked about the other day in Smart Perspectives, that you might have an aspect of immunity going forward. So if this virus could become like a chickenpox situation or a measles situation, where once you have it, you've got the immunity for the rest of your life. It would be nice if it's for the rest of your life, but that is something our timeline and our experience with this virus is so short that it would be really tough to make that wholesale application to the whole broad population. Then the other aspect is dealing with mutations, and all viruses tend to mutate. And if it is, and there is significant evidence that it is a mutated virus, then is it going to mutate backwards to its original case, or its original status, which is probably a bat virus? And then that would mean that it's likely going to get weaker and weaker and weaker as we move through the timeline. There were some other stories about that immunity, uh, and it was finally proofs for reinfection. Yeah, that was Eric, who has been literally kind of a heralding of great stories, of great news. Eric was a good person to have followed on Twitter at the very beginning of this story, and he sounded the alarm long ahead of many other doctors in the community. And with that, he brought a sense of authority and knowledge of virology to this topic that we were all a little bit concerned about. In fact, if not just afraid of. I mean, look at the toilet paper runs, thinking that was going to save people without getting into food. But Eric was one of the first ones to ring the bell, and he garnered himself quite a bit of attention on the talking shows on the CNBCs, the CNN, and so forth. He also got a little flack. He absolutely got a little flack for being a little bit of alarmist, and he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong in going down that road. So yeah, two strains, Robin. That's kind of what it looks like. Even between the east and west coasts of the United States, it appeared that there were two strains, and one on the east coast more virulent than the one on the west coast. Even though the one on the west coast probably showed up first in Washington State, and then Seattle was very, very quick at jumping on that and locking down the nursing homes in those places where we have a weakened population, and they were able to firewall that fairly well, and fairly aggressive lockdown measures too. So the question is, when is it time to come out? Just simply, when's it time to come out from this event? And then this story, this guy's selfie blew up over the last day. This guy picked up COVID in early March down in Florida at a big gathering. And there were probably 50, 55, 60 people I saw on the BuzzFeed article that got COVID from that gathering of people. They kind of came from all over the world down to the winter party down in Florida. This guy got sick, and he was intubated after about 3 days and was knocked out. And he woke up when he woke up, and in the process of recovering, he asked, how long have I been out? And he had figured it was about a week, but ultimately he had been out for 6 weeks. 6 weeks before he regained consciousness. So that's kind of how out of it you are, and you could see how he wasted away. He said even picking up his phone was just such an effort because the phone was so heavy, and you could see before he was kind of a muscle guy, so kind of intense in that regard. So we, here in Colorado, we're on the rural side, and if being outdoors is not a bad thing, if the natural air and the sunshine is an antiseptic, and we're able to be outside, then maybe we need to be able to have access to the outdoors, probably and partially just simply for our own mental health. That if we can get out and maintain a little bit of a semblance and have that reconnection with the outdoors as we move into May and summer, then that's not going to be a bad thing. Um, so yeah, Risa, you saw that photo. That was kind of intense. And so I don't want to go through that. I don't want to go through that kind of thing where somebody locally had even said it felt like there was Chernobyl in their lungs, and that's more than any of us ever want to have to willingly go through. So yeah, yeah, that's scary. If we can get some immunity from that, then that would be a good thing, and then we would essentially individually have to accept going through that experience. We would want to amp up that immune system, and then have what arguably the treatments that we have for this, either zinc or the hydrochloroquine, that HCQ pill, that anti-malaria pill, that might be the one thing that we all would want to be just literally issued as a population. So if we encounter the drug or encounter the virus, that we could go through it. For me, that would be the smartest approach, is just have that drug available to the general population almost in an over the counter situation, so that if we open up the economy, get things running again, that we would have that available drug in an over counter situation. Because there was another Tyson food plant, I don't remember the state right now, I just read the article this morning, believe it or not, where there are 540 people infected in this chicken plant all of a sudden, in that immediate need, or in that situation where there's close quarters. It's damp, it's wet, it's not cold, but it's just so, it's such a wet environment that you need to have those kind of protections, which make it very difficult to do your job on a meat like assembly line. So I would think having these antidotes, these drugs that have been demonstrated to work, although there is definitely pushback from the establishment to use those drugs, that I would have to honestly, if you're going to save a life, you would just want to have them available. It's just that simple. I kind of agreed on. There's another agenda going on, and since there is, how do you say this kindly, a need to bring the population down, or a perceived need to bring the population down. And because this has been a planned event, or they have planned for such events, let's put it that way, to dance around the accusational part of it, that if they needed to bring the population down for a false flag event, for because Social Security, and it's the same in China, where they just have too many people to where the economy cannot support, that you would need to bring the population back a bit. Even Bill Gates saying, adamantly, that we needed to bring this down, and depopulation has been on that Bilderberg, on that Atlantic Council, on that CFR agenda for such a long time, that you would want to have this pandemic do as much of your work, of your agenda, before you would roll out the cure. Even if it's the cure, it's the same with cancer. We've had cures, or the potential of cures, but they tend to get sidelined because there's such an industry that has been put up, propped up, promulgated, to keep the industry of sickness in place. So I think there's definitely something else going on out there. Yeah, my lifestyle hasn't changed a whole lot except for art shows and traveling to these shows. I'm a homebody. I agree, Risa. We're kind of in the same situation here, being remote. But what we have done is we stocked up in January and February. There was definitely an effort to prepare the household, so we didn't have to do frequent trips to the store, to reduce our interaction with the outside world, if you will. Yeah, Robin, I'm sure there's something else going on here, but we just have to use our best judgment and discernment moving forward. As a healthcare provider, it's tough for me to see the politicalization of the issue. I agree. You would think that those in those positions of authority would simply be there for the betterment of humanity, that that Hippocratic oath would supersede all else, kind of like the Constitution, to protect the nation from threats, foreign and domestic, would be further at play rather than ceding the betterment of humanity and the betterment of the republic, the betterment of your patient for outside agendas. And I think we can all agree that there's been some other things at play. Gardening, yes, Risa, that's one of the issues we're dealing with here. There's just not enough time. We had a frost last night, believe it or not, here in the mountains of southern Colorado, 29.7 degrees. So it rounds up to 30. But that's cold enough that all we had up was little spinach seedlings. That was the greatest thing that we had at risk here at this party, though I know there was other folks who had other things out. But what are we, 2021 May? And that seems to be a little late, but not abnormally late to have a frost here because of that big storm that's churning over the middle part of the country, is dragging around a whole lot of cold air. Yeah, Robin, garden in every usable space. I think that's where this is going. As this virus has really put a hard stop on so many things that were in the news in the beginning of February and March. All the trade across the ports, the trade across the Pacific, a lot of that slowed down. And it hasn't been in the news. It hasn't even come across a lot of the alternative news that those supply lines have reopened, that those dock workers are working. It's been, instead of it being a daily affair of those dock workers sharing stories, we're waiting for the financial news to come out at the end of the month, where we see the units of cargo coming from China or leaving Long Beach or leaving the port of Seattle and so forth, or Charleston or Savannah or Jacksonville. And that's not been in the daily news. It's been, relegated just to the financial press, which is at once a month kind of thing. So you kind of lose track of the immediacy of what's happening with the trade across the planet. And even if saw one story today where the GDP of the US was going to be down, or forecast to be down, in the mid 30% range. That's huge. And Ford opened up their plants up in Michigan, or at least one plant in regards to this particular story. It had been open for 2 days before there was another cluster of cases, and they had to shut the assembly line down once again. And I think that's what we're going to find in these places where we have a lot of workers trying to get back to work in these assembly line kind of situations, whether it's textile, whether I think the places that might be most immune from this would be semiconductors, where they're already in clean suits to go into these rooms to do their work, to do their assembly, to do their validation, do their certification and packaging. They're already in clean suits. So maybe that industry might be the greatest protected because of how the workers have to dress to go into their work. That's very different than clothing in Bangladesh, or clothing in Thailand or China or Singapore or Indonesia. Those places, uh, minimal protection from worker to worker to worker. And in those environments where they've got one large, probably questionable HVAC system, that everybody's going to be rebreathing a lot of the same air repeatedly throughout the day. So there's an ascension going on right now, and that happens all at once. When it happens all at once, it rolls into our lives. It's already made a change in the way we think. We can't wait to step into it. We can't wait for help to stepping into it. There is an aspect of that happening. And I think this event is a bit of a prelude to that, as it as Don has been saying, there's something else going on. There is something larger looming over the horizon. And wouldn't it be interesting if we haven't all simply kind of gathered our wares, got the family once again close to us, disconnected in either an emotional way, a little bit of our thoughts mentally changed. So we're doing more from home, and that alone prepares us for something else to come. Saw a tweet from Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, and he said, "From now on, our primary focus will be work from home," and that's going to They're in the Bay Area where the traffic is insane getting to and from work. And if we have shown, clearly demonstrated for 2 months now, that you can maintain a business with at home workers, that cuts down so many costs. That cuts down the demand for commercial real estate, which they have been building without abandon. And in fact, one of the guys, if you saw the movie The Great Short, The Great Big Short, or I think it was The Great Short, uh, he was saying as early as 2017 that that was his next big financial play, was commercial real estate. And this event has clearly demonstrated that his anticipation of what was happening in the world to be correct, that that would be the next big short, because these malls, it's going to be difficult to social distance, and either you need more square footage in a restaurant to hold what used to be the fire code limit for patrons in a property, or people are just going to stay home and they're not going to go out, because of the risk of getting this virus, or they've just become accustomed to living in a different way. And I think that's going to be the thing, is if it takes 21, 30 days to establish new habits, new ways of living, new patterns of expectation. And that's, in my opinion, kind of where we are. Since we're now 60 days since the middle of March lockdowns, we've adjusted to this. We've adjusted to not having to go out, to cooking at home. I know somebody who's a family that they do it all the time now, whereas before they would eat out regularly. And once you have these skills, once you have these talents, and you're clearly saving money by eating at home, it's going to be tough to let go and spend $100 on a meal or $80 on a meal once you had dinner, drinks, and a tip. And I've even seen some receipts now where there's a COVID surcharge, and there was one in Florida where it was greater than 30% the tab. And if that is added to the tab, even fewer people will be able to afford to eat out. So that's kind of a different aspect of going to this, as to really how deep, literally how deep this event has changed our way of living. So we rediscover routine, says Robbins, and choices that we want to make from a place of intention. Creating that from a place of intention and also revision. We've been forced into revision, simply forced into revising how we live, even with a solution. If it's an over the counter, I don't think there'll ever be a vaccine for this. I really, really don't. They're going to try, uh, and they're going to watch some clusters of people. I know there was one small group of 8 healthy young people that endured the vaccine, but since this virus is such a long time in incubation before it pops out, either days or eventually weeks, that I don't know whether they can roll out a vaccine that works for 8 individuals, teenagers or the guy or people in their 20s, whether that's even applicable to the broad demographic of the population. I just don't think that's even possible. I'd rather eat at home. I'm yes and no. I enjoy the ability to go out and kind of socialize. That's just a little bit of me in there. The ability to kind of get out of the house, since you work at home. Then it is nice to get a little reprieve and go out and socialize a little bit. For those who are out all day, you either want to grab that meal and go home and then hibernate until you got to go to work tomorrow, or you revise and you generate new patterns. It's amazing how we adjust. Thankfully, we're able to adjust as quickly as we allow ourselves to. It's interesting. We can throw that to, say, a canary, a bird in a cage. You can open the cage, but then does the bird fly away? Is it too comfortable and its imprisonment to even then want to leave? That pattern is set, and those are all things in your neural system. The neuroplasticity. Do we want to change how we think? And so the bird is comfortable in its cage. The new normal, best way to accept it, enjoy it, and stop complaining about it. Yeah, because we can't necessarily change it. I believe we've got some renegade governors out there. We've got some courageous medical people, and they don't necessarily have to be in this country, that will do the case studies and decide and provide the medicine to deal with this COVID. And I think that'll probably be done by summer. We'll have enough countries who have to open up. In the case of Ecuador, I was reading that they need to open the mines because they need to have that income from mining for their national budget. And if you're locked in, everything's locked down, then that income to support the nation's activities has come to an end. And if they don't have the reserve currency like the United States does, they've got to open up to generate that product to then sell in the world market for the national income to then sustain the nation's systems. Same with the oil producing countries. They've got to create and continue to create that national product to sustain its systems if they don't have the reserve currency. And that is solely the gift of the United States right now is that reserve currency to where we can literally throw 2 billion, 3 trillion, $4 trillion at this problem immediately without inflation. It'll come back because all of that debt eventually will have to hit into the open market in one way or another. Complaining just puts us in a bad space. Yeah, that's kind of that what if space. What if? What if? What if? I love cooking, and now that I'm not driving 3 to 4 hours a day for the career, I'm branching into doing things that I really enjoy. It does. It gives us time to enjoy a little bit of our hobbies. Canary in a cage, right? That's truly where we are. We're in our doors. We can look outside, places like Spain or Puerto Rico or even Italy in the northern part of the country where, you're truly stuck indoors. And it wasn't so bad when it was winter, but now that it gets to be summer and these outdoors and baseball season for those who are into those kind of things, every beautiful day that you can't get outside without being tattled on for going outside is kind of a painful loss of opportunity. And because being outdoors is simply so good for you, it hurts. It hurts to let go of that. You don't want to let go of that. I tend to be a loner, and this is exaggerating that. Yeah, it's truly a mixed blessing. Yeah, I just yeah, going to the store and having to gear up, that's a little pain in the butt, but it is what it is because I don't want to look like that dude over there with the tube into his stomach and losing 50 pounds. And I certainly don't have that kind of muscle mass to lose. So we have to protect ourselves one way or another. Uh, Karen, Robin, your career change was perfectly timed. Plus, you're an amazing cook. May I move in? Oh yeah, yeah. Robin's definitely good at that. Yep, this is going to unfold as we head into summer. If there is the impact of weather into it all, and I believe there is, I absolutely believe there is. Otherwise, 100 years ago, the medical community as a whole would not have moved their patients outdoors, whole wards outdoors, into the hospitals, opening the windows regardless of the weather to let the fresh air in. I think that's vitally important for our health, for our well-being, is to get outside. And because I keep wanting to say Friday, but it's not Friday, it's just Thursday, but that doesn't mean it isn't gorgeous. All right, guys. Let's let that be it for this version of the Coffee Break Show. What if this is divine intervention to reawaken us all into this dense reality? Yes, it is dawn. We're headed in the direction of chaos, and we're certainly in chaos as we speak, but now we get a breath. Where do we go as a human race? I have a feeling that that's going to be revealed in the very, very near future. All right, guys, have a great day. And hey, my coffee's no, it's not cold yet. If I drink it while I'm talking, my mouth gets all gummed up, and that's not a pretty sight. So we'll see you tomorrow on the Coffee Break Show. And Vicky Helm will be back on Monday, and she didn't pop in here. I'm a bit surprised. She's probably just lurking in the corner. I know Vicky. All right, guys, love y'all. Keep looking up. See you tomorrow.